So it looks like they've left me by myself, so I better bring in somebody to talk with. Joining me is Andy Weiland. Hey, Andy, welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Ed. Good, good. How are you?
Not bad. We're going to be talking about Test Studio today.
Yes, sir.
Let's give everybody a elevator pitch of what Telerik Test Studio is and what it does.
Sure. So Telerik Test Studio, it's really designed to bring QA testing into agility, if you will. We've got an interface that allows for you to really determine where your testing is going to be on the spectrum between completely coded and owned by the developers and completely potentially codeless and owned by the QAs. So we really built a tool that's approachable by all sorts of users. In fact, I'd say a 60-40 split between our technical users and our non-technical, non-technical being the 60% there. And yeah, we have a tool that really allows you to create robust tests for your applications and automate those and execute them as part of your build process and accomplish what so many want to accomplish with the CI/CD solution.
We have a concept in Telerik Test Studio called translators. And let's talk a little bit about what translators are and why they're important to people that are using either Kendo UI or Telerik UI for Blazor, MVC, and those things.
Yeah, the translators, well, first of all, Test Studio is built on a .NET framework for testing, so it's a very comfortable environment. We have both a Visual Studio integration plugin as well as a standalone environment. And the translators are in there to understand and automate complex controls. And of course, we're really good at creating complex controls. So to go along with those, we developed these translators so that we have a testing tool that can innately understand how to work with, as you can see, like the data viz kind of charts and graphs that you're seeing there, or a complex grid that you need to automate. It can be really challenging with many testing tools and open source frameworks and things like that. So those translators really give us an edge and really make it a lot easier to create and maintain those automated tests.
Yeah, it's a really nice integration point between products here because we've got all of these UI products that we make for pretty much any platform that you want to write a web front end for, Vue, React, Angular, jQuery, and then all of .NET, including Blazor. And what this does, it gives the test recorder like intelligence on those UI components, so you don't have to manually go through and like inspect them for values and things like that. It actually prompts you. This is an attribute that you may want to validate in your tests, and it gives you an option of many of the different properties that are exposed on those components, and it uses generally the same language that those components use to explain the property that you're selecting and stuff. So it's a really nice integration point, and it's something that I think people should look more closely into. And we're going to show you some of that today. We're going to take a tour of some of Test Studio while we write some unit test or automated tests. Before we do that, Andy, I think we should probably give a little highlight to maybe some of the new features and things that came in this release.
Well, and we do have, from a release standpoint, we are going to be coming out a little bit staggered from the main R1. So the R1 for Test Studio is due out next month, in this coming month, in February. Yeah, we've recently, and actually the redesigned recorder was something that we did previously. We've basically made it a much more lightweight, much more responsive and reactive recorder. We'll definitely be showing you that today. And then for things to come, we've got a lot of great things. If you jump down to that next link on the right there under the new features, the roadmap part of it, you could see a lot of the cool stuff that's coming out with this new release. So the R1 2021 what a lot of people have been really interested in is headless browser execution. And it's a lot more speed and some stability in the testing as well, that you don't have to necessarily monkey around with the browser surface level with these headless tests that you can execute. And so that's something that's really exciting. It's a new offering, but it falls right in line with the way we build and maintain our tests. So we're bringing ease of use to headless browser execution. And of course, that's going to be able to work in your agile pipeline. So you'll have the ability to choose between headed, like full user kind of interaction type testing, which is still automated, or this headless variety as well.
Yeah, that'll be nice for quickly executing these tests, especially if you're in a development role and you already have your unit tests running. Those run pretty fast, and then maybe you want to run some end-to-end tests before you maybe like push to GitHub or something like that. And you could just run this stuff very quickly, validate that you didn't break anything, and keep on trucking.
Yep, exactly. In fact, what a lot of people look for is a simple code, an exit code that comes from the automation. You're basically looking for a zero from the automation, from the list of tests that you're running against that application, meaning that if that's zero, that means there were no failures, and that could trigger deployment at that point. So, to get to that full the continuously improvement, continuous deployment kind of strategy, this is a really key point of that, and making sure the application health is where you need it to be before it goes live.
Excellent. And we've got PDF validation. There's already, if I'm not mistaken, some document validation, isn't there not?
There is. We already have, if you're looking at a PDF in a web view, in a web viewer today, we already do have the ability to go into that PDF and essentially OCR anything out of it. And it's really cool the way it works, because you can target a certain area of a PDF and just extract whatever might be there, or verify what's in that one little spot. So for example, if you're looking at like a quote that's being produced and populates a PDF, you could have it go verify where that little total is on the quote, make sure that's correct. Stuff like that we do already have. This goes a little bit further for a PDF file that's basically just on disk rather than in a web viewer.
Interesting. Yep. And we got a new storyboard coming, it looks like.
Yeah, the storyboard's cool. Definitely want to show you that today. It's been around forever. We've had the storyboard, but now we're really improving the quality of it, and adding some features to that. So it's a really nice feature.
Do you want to talk anything about R2 and R3 releases? Are those too far off? Should we dig into some demos, or do you want to talk some more on these points?
I think briefly, yeah, we could touch on what's coming after that. We do try to keep 3 major releases a year. They may not be completely in line with the DevTools main release, just so you know, but we are right there, pretty close to the same schedule, if not, just a few weeks off, like in this example. But yeah, coming out for R2, smart test maintenance. We're doing a lot of work to improve our UI, to make ease of use a big point, to make it even easier for both non-technical or technical users to come into the application and figure it out on their own by putting things in the right spot, and by giving them some better workflows. So that smart test maintenance. And test maintenance is where you make your money. That's where your ROI is in a testing tool. Is not in the beginning. Everything's got a learning curve. Everything's got that initial project of building tests. But it's once you've got a test bed laid out there, once it's running, that's where you really see how stable are these tests over time. And then when they break, or when something breaks them, how easy is it to fix them and maintain them? And it's something that we've done so well for so long. We're just going to make it even better and even smarter as well. And so that will make it, auto healing as well. Exactly.
So I'm kind of new to the automated test stuff. I've done some, but I'm no expert by any means. I'm going on an assumption here and saying auto heal is when a test breaks, and we're going to suggest some way that you can fix that test. So maybe something has changed about the UI component you're testing or something like that. Maybe the value is different. The test fails, but there's something in your test that needs to be updated. It's kind of a false failure in
Yeah.
some respect. And then we're going to suggest a way to make that test pass by changing something that we're validating. Is that correct?
That's correct, and really we do this somewhat already. We have the ability in Test Studio today when there's a failure. Actually, we've already built in with our image recognition as a backup function to our find logic. There's already a backup that makes these tests more robust. So they should be failing less because now we have a function that says, hey, we didn't find it by the find logic, but let's see if we can find it by the image. Okay, if we did, we'll go ahead and continue the test, but we'll provide a warning for that test. So that could still be a passing test. So we're doing some of this today. The next level will be, okay, an element logic has changed. Rather than shifting to image as a backup, potentially we come back, or even in the process of switching, maybe it continues, but it comes back with more information about how to fix that. And again, even some of that is available today. I mean, Test Studio has been pretty sophisticated when it comes to that already. So now it's just making it more automated, making it even smarter to go figure out, okay, for this particular case, it's a bug or it's a test issue, and sometimes determining that is the hardest part.
Yeah, this sounds super helpful if you're maybe like refactoring some code or something and you're going through the system and like renaming a bunch of things, but that renaming of things doesn't really affect the rendered output of the web page. So while it's rendering correctly, something behind the scenes in the code is called something different. So what we can do is kind of detect that and suggest that, maybe the name changed and it didn't really affect the overall rendering, so it's probably not an actual failure.
Exactly. And like you said earlier, those false positives sometimes, right? And so as you'll see in the tests we build today, it's important to have those assertion points and those verification points built in, not just to make sure your timing of the test works with your application, but to make sure those key things are caught when they need to be, and you don't get those false positives, which certainly you wouldn't want to run a list of tests that produce false positives and then deploy your application. That's not really accomplishing the goal. So we really take a lot of care to build these tools in to make sure people can have very robust tests.
That sounds really cool. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then further down, we've got some .NET Core support. This is really coming from our feedback portal too, by the way, and anybody who would like to affect and be a part of the way this application continues to grow. We do have our feedback portals. I'm sure you guys may have mentioned those in other product kind of showcases too. But we go to our feedback portals. We listen to our customers. That's a great spot. In fact, I think you can see under the Have a Feature request on that right nav of this page, but it takes you over there to the feedback portal, and that's where we look. We look to see what's the top voted item in the feedback portal, and that's one thing we really use to make sure we're connecting with the customers and hearing your voice, and see who's voted the most for these features. So take advantage of that. But one of the things that has come from that, if you go check out that feedback portal, you'll notice that .NET Core 3.1 support for WPF applications was pretty high on that list. So where we want to make sure we are continuing to evolve and stay up with the you can see it right there in the second one. Top one on the list, in fact. So there's lots of great stuff in there. You can follow, you can comment, you can vote. Definitely encourage people to be a voice that helps us continue to drive our applications. We love to see that interaction, and a lot of times you'll find in the responses in here, in the comments and in the conversations, that our developers are right there. They're in touch with our customers directly through these portals a lot of times. So it's great to see that as well.
Yeah, and I mentioned this with our Telerik UI for Blazor product as well. When you see some of these items, there's often workarounds that you can do to get the desired feature, but it's not something that's baked in, and it's not discoverable, or the UX isn't quite there. So there's like a short-term solution to get the thing done that you're trying to do, and you'll see suggestions or samples and things like that pop up in these while we work on, integrating it tighter or coming up with, a menu for the thing that needed to happen, that type of stuff. So it's a
Definitely.
really good resource, and our support people are fantastic at picking up on those things and, offering temporary solutions while we get features built.
Yeah. And last but not least, I think on that list, test analyzer, element analyzer, more self-healing. Um, different applications test in different ways, and there's different settings to adjust. And that's one great thing about Test Studio. It's not just built for one type of application. We test Angular applications. I mentioned it was .NET framework under the hood, but you can test against your Angular, and as you'll see Blazor, of course, that's .NET. But any web type of application, whether it's custom controls or Telerik controls, obviously we do even more with Telerik controls, as you'll see. But this is really going to take us up another level where, rather than having to figure out what are the settings I need for this type of application, the application analyzer is going to do that for you. It's going to say, hey, this is XYZ. This looks like it's the way it's going to be best set up for this automation. And it takes care of that for you. So that's some cool stuff. Really can't wait to see. Of course, as always, roadmaps are subject to change. So don't hold me completely to it, but that's the big goals for this year, and we're excited to see Test Studio continue to evolve
But you
in that
promised.
direction.
Our kids do this to us all the
I
time.
know.
But you promised. It's like, no, we didn't promise. We
Yeah,
suggested.
exactly.
Did you have anything that you wanted to drive on your screen today?
Definitely, sure.
Okay, good. I will, while you get that set up, I'm going to navigate over to demos.telerik.com again and just show off something that we kind of missed in the Blazor demos we may be covering here shortly. If you go to demos.telerik.com and you go to the Blazor applications in the demos, we have a brand new Blazing Coffee warehouse demo that has a lot of really cool features in it. I had the privilege of building this on stream and basically just dog fooding our components. So like on the home page, you'll find like a nice tile layout that you can drag and drop, and it remembers your locations that you left these on. There's a lot of integrated like charts and grids. And it's doing some fetching here to only get the data it needs. And the code for this is all up on GitHub, so you can see how these pages were built. And there's also videos on my stream showing you how some of the decisions were made in here. But it really shows off like a lot of the interesting features of the grid, editing of items, dialog boxes. There's even some really integrated theming capabilities in here. So it'll auto detect your OS theme and pick a light or dark theme based on your system settings. So that is that might be an interesting discussion to have in the context of Test Studio to see how some of these things are accomplished as well. So this is a new demo application that you can grab. And again, the GitHub repo is out there, linked on the left-hand side of that, so you can get it. If you don't have the Telerik products, just get a 30-day free trial and then grab the GitHub repo, and you can run this on your machine and see how everything wires up. Did you have a screen to share, Andy?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start sharing if you'd like.
Yeah, it'll come up, and then I can bring it into the mix here.
Okay. All right, should be coming up for you. Oh, I got to tell you which one. Let me give you this one.
While you grab that screen, I'll go ahead and drop in this this link I was talking about, by the way, demos.telerik.com, Blazing Coffee. This was a fun one to build. It's got some documentation behind it too. If you hit the little info icon up at the top tells you a little bit about what is going on in each page. So if you're not familiar with the components, you can click up here and you can see that it's got a tile layout component. It uses some application state, localization, all of that good stuff. I'm still not seeing it. Oh, there it is. There it is, Andy. I got it now. All right, Andy, you're in the driver's seat now, and I'm learning. So,
Awesome.
again, I've used the product professionally years ago, and I'm just getting back into it now. So I know enough to be dangerous, but that's not a good thing.
Well, I will definitely take it easy on you, I suppose. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, we really do want to make this something that's approachable by, again, non-technical or technical users alike. So there are, the ability to code, the ability to record and playback, if needed, edit and code and extend your test. But generally speaking, Test Studio presents a test that's virtually codeless, right? So when we look at these steps here that I'm expanding, you have all these abilities and settings to modify, for example, async calls that need to have the appropriate timing for the request to come back. That's built into the step. You can add a timeout for it. And of course, we have timeouts already built in all areas. So it's a really smart way to approach testing. We really elevate all of these settings. If you can see over here, we've got even more settings for step 6 to, how do we want it to type, or how fast, in those cases, or depending on the type of step. Here's one that's an input. We could say it's encrypted, or go ahead and encrypt this. It's a password. So again, a theme that you'll see with Test Studio is we try to bring things to the surface that are easy drop-down checkbox options to maintain your test, that doesn't require it to go to code. So it can stay in this sort of codeless format. So that's what we talk about when we talk about a codeless test. Of course, you always have that ability to either convert something to code or script from scratch. Here's an example of a data-driven test step that was converted to code, that's actually using an email generation kind of function to generate a random email and throw append it with a particular domain name as well. So something cool like that. That's to basically create a variable, a random variable in the test.
Before you close that too, I just wanted to point
Sorry.
out that this is C# code.
Correct. Yeah.
So if you're a .NET developer, it doesn't necessarily mean that your application has to be .NET. Again, we can test Vue, React, Angular, Vanilla JS, all those things. But in the context of a .NET developer, if I'm writing a Blazor application, I'm already familiar with C#, and I've got a testing tool now that also uses C#. So I'm very familiar, and I can reuse my skills in here. So that's always a win for me.
Definitely. You can see too the IntelliSense that's built in, and this is here in our standalone environment. We do again have the Visual Studio plugin where you can build and maintain your tests in Visual Studio as well. So really the way we like to think of it is, you can have your spectrum and determine where you want your team to be on that spectrum. How codeless or coded do you want your tests, and who do you want to own testing? So that, think of it as a slider, and you can kind of position yourself anywhere along that spectrum with Test Studio.
Another value add there is if we have the Test Studio environment and also the Visual Studio environment, this leaves us open to not having to force, say, QA people into needing Visual Studio. And therefore, it also frees up a license in the Visual Studio product. So you don't have to have like a Visual Studio Enterprise product for QA folks that aren't opening and editing code. They can just use Test Studio directly and build their tests and run them without having to need those other tools on top of it.
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of other tools do require that, and it's kind of an odd balance to give somebody that's not very technical a license that gives them access to an application. It doesn't seem weird. I mean, it seems a little weird to me, but here, yeah, like you said, no additional license needed to be able to do this. It's built into the application. So.
Yeah. There's some interesting cost savings things that I think people might miss out on with the DevCraft bundle, where our components come with the document processing library, so there's no like additional licenses required to interop with like Word and Office documents, where some other things might require a separate license for that type of a thing. And then, this scenario here where you might be able to free up some Visual Studio Enterprise licenses for people that aren't necessarily using them for development.
Yep, definitely savings for sure. Cool. So let me show you around a little bit more. So I know you've been around here, Ed, a bit, but we'll start something up here new. We'll go create some tests on Blazing Coffee. And actually, before we do, I'm going to jump into some settings real quick. As I was talking about, it's really flexible. Test Studio can be modified for different applications. We do support WPF testing, any kind of web applications. We also do have responsive testing, where you can execute and build tests in a responsive layout. With this emulated device, you can basically pick what type of device you want to be emulating for that responsive testing. And then, of course, the good old find logic, right? So when we're working with like Angular applications, we use identifiers that might be like this was from a recent application I was working on that was Angular, where I used an ng repeat or an ng data type identifier. The whole idea is, depending on the application under test, you can modify this. So, Ed, a question to you.
Mm-hmm.
In Blazing Coffee, did you use any kind of standardized identifier for your elements?
I did not.
Uh-oh. That's okay. We're gonna be fine. But I'm gonna throw ID close
Hashtag
to the
not my job.
I know, right? But I'm gonna throw ID close to the top. You might use this in some applications very reliably. If you have an application with dynamically generated IDs, you might want to lower the prioritization on that. You might have something maybe more useful like an ARIA label, or in the Angular applications here, it might come in an ng dash kind of format. If you're super lucky, you might get an automation ID, which should be static and should be reliable. I'm just reordering things here before I hit record, because that does dictate how Test Studio is going to look for the identifiers and what order and what priority to use in looking at those identifiers. So just moving some things around, don't mind me.
So just a little sidebar on my demo applications. There's two reasons that I don't necessarily add IDs. One of them is we really don't need them in Blazor for anything Blazor specific. For two, this in the Blazor world, especially in the earlier days, to me was a code smell, because what other components were doing, not Telerik components, but other components that are on the market were doing, is wrapping JavaScript components. And those IDs were not optional, they were required, because the JavaScript had to go find those DOM elements so it could do direct DOM manipulation on them. And I wanted to show that our components didn't have that code smell leaking through into our native UI components. So I've gotten in quite the habit of never specifying IDs for anything.
You're free from IDs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that shouldn't be any problem for Test Studio, which is great. Again, super flexible setting options here. This is some of the stuff that we're talking about with the analyzing an application. So today might take a little bit of doing your own analyzation of the application, determining what's the best set of identifiers for the application. We'll do a little bit of that here in a minute. You mentioned the translators. Before I jump to that, I do want to show the image settings. So we do capture the images. This is something we have a pending patent on, that we actually have the combination of fine logic strategy and element images that can be used in sort of a backup format. So when the fine logic fails, we'll look for it again. We'll see if we can find that element by its image and continue the test with that. And then the only other thing I'll show you here is the list of translators. So you can still see we even have Silverlight. So if you're still testing Silverlight applications, this is a great tool for Silverlight testing. Here, of course, the WPF translators, and we have sets of generic ones for any third party, any custom controls we might run into. but then of course our own built-in. And when you look at the HTML grouping here, Blazor specifically, you can see there's all sorts of Blazor controls built in, the drop-down list, right? The grid, list view, all of these things that you can easily automate because Test Studio understands how to work with those complex controls.
Now, I see the checkbox interface here. Is there any benefit to turning off a certain tree of translators? Is there a performance gain? Is it just there for further customization?
It's really there for further customization, and you can actually create your own translators if you want. That is an ability. If you click this link down there, it'll go into articles telling you about that. But some every once in a while, it's very infrequent. I mean, out of the box, these are all turned on, so you don't even have to think about it. But every once in a while, we might turn one off to determine, how the generic control might see it versus the generic translator might see it versus the Telerik translator.
Okay.
I'll show you some of those layers and things when we jump over here into the recording. But great question. And by the way, we do have a dark theme. I'm working in light theme. I know, right? I should be in the dark theme. I find
Yeah.
that light theme's a little easier when you're demoing, but if it was just me on my own, I would definitely be in the dark theme.
That
So
was Curious Drive with the most important question.
I'm sure that was at the top.
Do we have dark theme?
Yeah.
That's like every developer's first question. Like, where's the dark theme? Because I get sunburned by light theme.
Yes, bright white light. Yes, exactly. Well, cool. Well, let's jump in and record. So I have a test here. I did that. If you do a little right click here, if you go to new up here, you can see the web, the WPF, the responsive web, load testing as well. I didn't know if I even mentioned that earlier, and manual testing. Manual testing, it's still manual, but here's a place to store it amongst all the other tests. Here's a place that you can track the execution, take screenshots, stuff like that. So it makes manual testing even better. If you still have to manually test, hopefully we can automate everything for you. By the way, too, while we're here, it comes up a lot. Source control integration. So you can connect your application up to a Git repo or a TFS, or Azure is one I'm using, repo. So that way your testers can be creating tests and keeping them alongside the application. And again, being part of that build process possibly as well. So the check-in and the checkout capabilities, the revert to server, the get latest, like all of those things are built in. To the source control, we also have bug tracking integration too. So when we have a test fail, we can determine, is it a bug or not? And if it is, we can click a button to submit it directly into, in my case, Azure or Jira or something like that. So we'll show you some of that. So
I'm going to try to ask a question preemptively here because I know it's going to come up. Do I need like a special license or anything like that for my CI/CD, build server?
That's a great question. We do have, what you're looking at here is my full ultimate license standalone interface where I can build and I can maintain and I can execute and I can schedule and all those things, my tests and build test lists. We do have a runtime license as well, and that's typically what's used on the build server. The runtime agent is, if you strip away the UI here to build and maintain, it still has all of the guts of Test Studio to execute, to send results somewhere, to view results, all sorts of stuff to basically build out a test lab. So we use those Test Studio runtime licenses on our execution agents, on our load agents, on anything that we want to performance monitor for our load testing. Sometimes we want to monitor a database server or an app server. So the Test Studio runtime is really what we call the Swiss Army knife of Test Studio. It does so many jobs. It's a really inexpensive license too. And I believe we may even be seeing an unlimited option in that in runtimes in the future. Don't quote me on that, but stay tuned.
Excellent. Thanks. Appreciate that.
You bet. Great question. So, all right, let's go ahead and record. So here we're in a blank test. I'll hit record. I believe I might have the URL you provided. That's not it. Let me get it from over here. And bring it over here. Let's see. I could probably just go straight to the coffee one,
Yeah,
the dash
you
coffee.
did have it in your recent list there, top one.
Oh, I did. Right below. What do you know? And what's nice is you have four different options to create and record your tests.
Mhm.
The great thing is you're not creating four different tests or five. You'll see that Safari will show up for execution too. We're not here to create five versions of every test. Test Studio is cross-browser compatible, so one test should work on all of the browsers. So really cuts down on maintenance, really ups the reuse as well. And I'll go ahead and use Chromium Edge here. By the way, when Edge came out, we had 0-day support. We typically stay right on top of these uh, browsers when they're rolling out updates and stuff like that. We keep right up with them.
Yeah.
So
I,
we'll hit
I don't
record.
want to rule out like any impossibilities. I'm not trying to oversimplify things, but these days the browsers, for the most part, all use the same engine. So I
Yeah,
don't know how much variance you're going to see between browsers. It doesn't mean that you couldn't possibly have, discrepancy between uh, Chromium on Edge and on the
the
Chrome
Chrome.
browser.
Yeah.
But the likelihood, I think, these days is starting to get less.
Yeah, I think that the differences are getting fewer and fewer for sure. And um, you know, there's still things that are a little bit different where I think we are working specifically on some Chrome things right now. Some of it, I wish they'd standardize the way they deliver and handle extensions. That would be nice. But we have to do what they do. So this is our new recording toolbar. I don't know if you've seen
This
this yet,
this
Ed.
is really nice. So for users that are new and this is the first time you've seen it, this is the way it's always been. No.
Yeah,
What it used to do is if you can just pull up Chrome DevTools or Edge DevTools, whichever one it is, like
sure.
F12, it used to just kind of resemble that same experience, but attached to the. I think you could you reorient it. I can't remember, but it would attach essentially to the bottom of the screen. So it would
Yeah,
change, it would take up a good portion of the screen that you're looking at. So
yeah,
now it's just compact in a nice little floating toolbar, which is a major improvement
yes.
over what we used to have.
Yeah, you can get it out of the way. And I think that was from our user feedback, right? There was some times where that recording toolbar was, hanging out down there, maybe hard to get to sometimes at the bottom of the screen, or maybe compressing the window that you're working in and recording in. So this is real lightweight. You also do have a vertical or horizontal option, so
Yeah,
if you
that's
want to put
super
it out of the
nice
way over
there.
there.
What I
Yeah,
like about this is it reduces like your travel time of your mouse. Like you can kind of move it to where you're working, and you're not forced to like click in the upper
definitely.
left hand corner of the screen and then go all the way back down to the bottom and start typing something, then come back. You're right there where you need to be already. I really
Yeah,
like that.
it's a great point. So, well, first thing I'm going to do, let me actually do a little floating here. We're going to get app, the app in front of in front of Test Studio, the test. And actually, as you can see, when I hit F12, actually I hit it twice.
It's
It captured that.
recording it all.
Yeah. So we do capture keyboard operations. We do capture drag and drop as well.
That's really important because if you want to test your keyboard navigation for users that are looking for that keyboard navigation function, you can test for that accessibility point there. Another thing I
Definitely.
thought was nice was when you dragged the browser window, the floating toolbar followed. It kind of stayed pinned where it belonged. Didn't, completely float to the point where it's not lined up with the browser anymore.
Yeah. And it's a good point to make too when we're working on a responsive design application like this, that Test Studio has the intelligence to know where to go find the elements. So if I'm going to click on Manage Product, even though the shape and size of the UI is changing and maybe the buttons eventually even get stacked in a different way, we're not looking at a path. We're not looking for it on an index. We're not looking for it based off of a position. We're finding that element based off of reliable find logic, and we're going to take a look at that here as we go on. So um, let me do some housekeeping though real quick. I love this about Test Studio. When you do kind of random stuff like this, or accidentally record, you can go ahead and clean things up as you're recording. So this idea of being able to record and edit simultaneously is great, right? I can make mistakes and fix it on the fly, which happens a lot for me. But we'll go ahead and hit manage products here. You can see that it's captured that. You can also see that as we capture our steps, we're capturing an element image. We are also capturing that element in the what we call the element repository. And I can actually filter this down for just this test. Right now, it's the only element in the repository, but some great ease of use, right? That's one thing
Yeah,
that
it
we
gives
hear a
us a
lot.
nice catalog of all of
Exactly.
our tested elements there.
Yep, precisely. And then if we want to, let's take a quick look. So, generally speaking, for a non-technical tester, they can hit record, they can do what a user does in the application, and it's going to capture things for them. I'm going to take you behind the scenes really quick just to show you when Manage Products was added. We're just going to go edit this element. And we're doing this in a live recording environment as well. Now, currently it's saying, hey, we can't find it. But if I go ahead and pause the recorder and take us back to the home screen where we originally clicked it, and we say validate expression, it can run that logic. And as you can see, it comes back and says, great, we found your element. And
Wow.
here you're seeing, it's hard to show, but it also highlights it. Let me see if I can get that to show here real quick, because I'll click it again. It's just too quick. It just highlights very quickly there. It won't be able to show that off very easily, but it highlights, as you can see with my mouse, it goes ahead and highlights it when you do that in the UI. So it really helps the user connect between what's this logic mean to the actual interface and the buttons and so forth.
Yeah, I would assume that, many developers and QA folks, they have like dual monitor setups where this would be a little bit easier to demonstrate. But
Definitely.
on the live stream, you're a little cramped for space and resolution, so it
Yeah,
doesn't come off
exactly.
so elegant here.
But it's shown us, if you'll remember the list of prioritized attributes that I had. I think I had text content rather high in the list, and that's what it got to. So Test Studio was basically saying, is the first highest priority identifier in this in this element? Do we see that when we query the element? If not, okay, what's the second highest? Is that one there, and is that one there? And so it will roll down that list. In this case, it used text content, the label on the button, combined with the tag name, the anchor. And that's something you'll see very common. A generic identifier like a tag name that tells us what type of element to look for, combined with something more unique. In this case, the text content, it could be an ID, it could be all sorts of things basically. And it's customizable, right? So right here, I can see what else Test Studio brought back, and there's an href. That might be a way for me to find this button. Especially if maybe we were testing in the same application in multiple languages, I might not want to use text content. Or even better, if I did a multi-language test, and I do have a video of this on YouTube, I could actually data drive the multiple languages and say, go find that button in Spanish, go find it in French, go find it in English.
Interesting.
So
Do you use resource files from .NET for that, or do you need like a CSV file or database, or how does that data get pulled in,
it's a
or all
great
the
question.
above?
All of the above. So you can add a data source to Test Studio, a live database being one of them. So some of the applications I've worked with in the past, there's like a translations table in the
Hmm.
database, and that's great. I mean, when you have that, you basically have all of the different languages, all the different labels on the buttons, and you just basically say, hey, let's use that for driving this test. So that's ideal. Um, you also, of course, have some flat file options here too, XML file as well.
So I've got a pile of questions of my own here, and I don't want to get you too far off track. So feel free to answer them if you have
Yeah,
things that you've already planned to
I'll go
do
ahead.
that will answer them.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer them right on the spot. So the page that you're looking at is I built this application, so I know the page very well. It has many dynamic things to it. So from a testing perspective, this could be tricky, or maybe the tool has things to solve this. So first of all, those items can be dragged and dropped in any order because it's a tile layout panel. Those things are saved to the local users. What do you call it? Local storage. So those things persist. If you move them, they stay there, even if you reload the browser. So that is something that if you were testing, like if you moved it in the test, the next time you come back, it would be in the same place you left it. So that's kind of an interesting thing there. If you
That's cool.
click on the settings wheel in the upper right hand corner.
Oh, hang on. Let me actually put this into the test. I just need to switch this
Oh, sure.
over to back to the test so it doesn't bark at me that I'm not recording against the actual test. And then I'll go do that as well. So we'll make that part of our test. It should
Okay.
record that Blazor click there.
So we have language selection in here. So it's
Beautiful.
cool that you put or talked about that a little bit already. So this was a globalized, localized app. So we could have different languages the user could select. So those names could change. This one again, it's not. I don't believe it. I put auto detection in there. I think it just defaults to English, but a user could select different languages. So that might be something we want to test whether it does it or
Yeah,
not.
that's cool.
And then the other option in there is the theme. Now
Yes.
this is driven by. You can see it's set to auto. So there is a small bit of code in the application that sniffs a media query, and it says if you have your desktop theme set to dark, we're going to go ahead and load the dark theme for the application. So what challenge does that bring to an automated test where one user might run it on a certain setting and get a dark theme versus a light theme?
Well, that's good. I mean, we shouldn't see that affected too much. However, I mean, obviously, if you're relying on image locate or image identification to find your elements, which is one of our options, you would definitely have two different versions of each of those, right? A light theme and a dark theme. But typically, with the find logic approach, which is our default, it doesn't matter, if it's dark or light, it's going to be able to locate that element and continue to interact with that element. So it shouldn't affect the test, generally speaking, unless you were unless you really wanted to focus on that. And for those capabilities, you do have a lot of image verification options. And I was just building some smoke tests for a customer and did a lot of nice kind of image verification things. For example, like this little dialogue here, we could potentially use our highlighter on this. And with this highlighter that I have, by the way, that's this little button right here you can toggle on. When you rest on a particular element, first of all, you do see there's some translators kicking in. So this is recognizing it as a Telerik Blazor window.
Mm-hmm.
There's a generic div inside of that. So that's the translator kicking in and understanding that. But then you can also go in here. You can verify, is it maximized, is it minimized, what the title is. So we'll go ahead and add a verification for that while we're at it. But let's say we want to rely on more of the image verification. Let's make sure that once we chose, dark, for example, that it is showing up dark. For that, I can go down into build step. So just to specify, we have some quick steps. These are pretty common things like waiting on an element to do something or to go away or to show up, verifying that something is set a certain way or visible, not visible. Extract to, this is to actually grab data from the live UI to create runtime variables, which is really, really cool. I love doing extraction. But if it's not in the quick hit list, you can go down to build step, and that's where the toolbar opens up and giving us these additional kind of verification options. We can get into stylistic verifications, looking at things like color and background, for example, and verify that we have the appropriate color. So these kind
Nice.
of cosmetic verifications can be built in. So generally with that type of test, to test dark and light theme, I'd probably have it go check out everything in light, for example, switch it to dark, go check out everything in dark, and make sure things are there and should be the right way. In addition, though, Ed, we've got the simple image verification, right? So with the smoke test I was talking about, this customer, they were really excited that we built this with image verification. What I like about these is if you want that test to just be like, hey, is this control? Is it showing up right? Is it the pretty control that I expect it to be when it's deployed and out there in the world? And image verifications give you a really quick way to do that, where I took an entire application and did a very quick smoke test, just by saying, does this look good? Does this look good? Does that look good? Certainly, you could even do large scale, like browser level verifications as well. But I like kind of getting more centered around a particular control. And then you've got some flexibility for the entire image, or as you can see here, there are XY coordinates, where if I say, let's just verify this the settings area, I can draw that box. And as you can see, it's filling out those coordinates. I do like to point out on coordinates, these are not window coordinates. First, it's going to go find that window wherever it may exist on the UI using the logic. Once it's there, this XY is based off of like the top left corner of that element, right? So it's not a whole screen that we have to look at. We can focus in inside of an element and say, okay, we're looking specifically at this. We're going to verify that that's correct. And then we even have text from image, which goes in a step further. Obviously, this is one that has a bunch of text that I can verify without having to do this. But kind of to that PDF conversation we had earlier, this is the type of thing we do with a PDF viewer, where we'll OCR the image and extract the text from it. And as you can see, it extracted that text. I can add a comparison as well, a different operator here, and so that's there too. So all these different ways, we say there's 4 solutions to every problem in Test Studio, and you're seeing, right here, we just did 3 different potential verifications on the same element in different ways.
Now, does the Test Studio test run a new instance of the browser, and I get all brand new like user storage and cache and all of that, or is it going to remember anything?
That's up to you. Obviously you have the ability to rerun the same test in that browser and keep all of that data if you'd like. But we do build in a clear browser cache step. So oftentimes, depending on the type of testing I'm doing, I will have one of these before my navigate step to clear the browser cache. You do have some options here too as to what more specifically you want to clear. So that's one way. We do also have a calibrate browsers option, and you can see that I have an update waiting for a dialog handler, in fact, for a certain browser here. But the calibrate browsers will allow me to restore and calibrate. As you can see, Chrome's not calibrated. I would do that, but I'm using Chrome right now, and that will restart it. But those are options that you have control over, and those are options that you can build into the execution, where it will actually, if I went to go execute on Chrome, it would say, hey, wait a minute, you have an open Chrome session. You sure you want to go forward? Because it's going to close that. And then depending on my clear cache, if I have that, it would clear it and give me that fresh start if I need it. Long answer to short question. Sorry, Ed.
No, I was just checking the time here. It looks like we've got about 5 minutes left.
Oh, good.
So if there is anything that I didn't delay too much with all my questions on, if there's anything else you wanted to show real quick, we probably need to show it, because we're going to pick some winners.
Yeah, let's do a quick, go ahead.
For our, what is it called here? Our drawing, our gift card
giveaway.
drawing. Yeah.
Nice.
So we've got about a good amount of viewers just in the Twitch stream alone. So it'd be interesting to see who wins the big gift card raffle. And then, Eva, are you coming on stream to help us give this away? Okay, so Eva's with us again.
This time I'm not muted, by the way. And I get a pat in the back, please. Thanks so much for taking the time to show us that, Andy. It was very interesting, and
my pleasure.
Thank you for the dark mode, I guess, from behalf of the whole developer community in the world and just everyone else. I'm also a fan. I'm not a developer, but I'm a fan of dark mode as well.
That dark mode was added to the Visual Studio editor as well, which you're not seeing right now. You're seeing the standalone. So that did get added to the VS experience too, which is really cool, just in this release.
Very smooth, very elegant.
Well, I appreciate it.
It's I'm here now to ask you for numbers. This time we are choosing a number between 15 and 17. I'm joking. We're not choosing 16. Sorry. This is a bad joke. No, we're choosing numbers between 1 and 23 this time. And yeah, Ed, drum roll, I guess.
So Andy, I think you get to pick here. I did it last time.
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna go 22. What was the top?
22. That's awesome. Congratulations to Will Stutz, who has a Twitch name that I can't pronounce as well. And it's a pattern today, and it's 8:30 in the evening. But congratulations, Will. We'll send you an email with your prize. Thank you so much for watching.
I just wanted to thank Andy for picking my age for that. That
Oh,
was really
nice.
cool. I thought that was really cool of him.
And
and
22.
Also, nice on the chair there, Andy.
Oh yeah,
Had to
I
point
took
that
the
out.
lead from you, man. I was like, I gotta get an Ed chair for sure. So
The Ed chair.
All right, Eva, are we bringing some new folks in here?
Yes.
thanks for having me. Time
Thanks,
for me
Andy.
to go. Bye, y'all.
I'm about ready to go back to my cage as well. Are you introducing them, or am I staying on here?
I'm
Looks
just
like
gonna
I'm
pop
sticking
them on
around.
stream. Here they are.
That's Alyssa and Carl.
Hey, everybody.
And I think I'm
We
just
need
gonna
game
go
show
back
music.
to lurking.
Ivana, I was laughing so hard. That joke was hilarious, by the way.
I don't know. It was all crickets here. I can't believe it. And I thought
it was
honestly, I thought
beautiful.
Ed would appreciate it.
I-
That was a dad joke, right?
I love dad jokes.
I
I'm
thought it
all
was,
about them.
I'm sorry. Anyways, I'm gonna try with another one, I guess. Like I'll go Google dad jokes now, and I'll go and stream after. And Ed, you'll have to stay on. And I know you'll be, off doing other things, but please listen to my dad joke and appreciate it.
Well,
So yeah, well, good luck. I'm gonna go Google dad jokes now. I'll see you later.
good luck,
Bye.
folks. Back to my
Bye.
cage. I'm gonna leave you with Carl and Alyssa. Bye bye.
Goodbye forever.